possibly waiting for somebody else. They'll just have to.
There are a couple missing.
Well, they'll have to take their chance and leap on stage. Right, so this is the last of the podcasting sessions. Oh, here's one.
I apologise.
I'll do a longer introduction. This is the last of the podcasting sessions. That are always such a big feature of Whooverville, and I hope that it's nice to see an audience not just made up of podcasters for once, which is nice that we've been moved into here. And I would like to do a big thanks to everybody at Whooverville who's let us do this, everyone at the Quad who has allowed us to do this as well and has helped with the technical side of it, and Siobhan and everybody. Sorry, lots of arms. I don't know what I'm being filmed, and it's all right on radio if you may wave your arms about. We've got a plethora of podcasters. I think that's the new group noun for podcasters, a plethora. And I will let them introduce themselves before they interview our special guest this afternoon. Writer, inventor of mechanical dogs, Mr. Bob Baker. So I shall pass this along and you can introduce yourselves, please.
I'm Karen, I'm from the Staggering Stories podcast.
I'm Adam, also from Staggering Stories.
Hello, I'm Liam, I'm from the Alhambra Audio podcast.
And I'm Michael from the Tin Dog podcast, named after K9.
Oh.
Yes, which is basically the entirety of all of my questions are K9 based.
And I'm Simon from the Doctor Who podcast.
So basically it's you surrounded by a lot of podcasters,
Yes.
not even remotely intimidating.
I'm frightened to death.
You should be.
Right. Carry on.
Right, first off, you are one half of the Bristol Boys.
One half of this boy.
Indeed. And can you tell us a little bit about how the Bristol Boys got together?
Yes. I used to work in a late opening shop in Bristol, and I was already making films in my basement on cartoons on a rostrum that I built myself. It's all totally the wrong technology, but I just get by making some, did some for the BBC and things like that. Anyway, the thing was that I wasn't earning money at making films, and so I had to do other things. So I did a bit of rebuilding and building work and that sort of stuff. And one place I did that was a shop, which I then opened, and it was open late till 9 o'clock at night. And I have to digress a bit, because people would ask me to help them make films on the rostrum, and this guy came to me. He wanted to make a film, and he said, "Can I pay you to make it on your rostrum?" I said, "Fine." And when he showed me the subject matter, I was a bit concerned about it, because it was a brilliant piece. It's George Crabbe's poem, Peter Grimes, and he wanted to just do it panning and zooming in, and all in black and white. I thought, my God. Anyway, go back to the shop. I'm there at 9 o'clock, and nearly every evening this guy would come in for Gaulois, French cigarettes, and so I had to stop especially for him. And we got to chatting and things, and I found out he was an advertising copywriter and worked in a big company in Bristol. And I talked about this film, and he said, "Well, why don't we write it then?" I said, "What?" He said, "Why don't we write it? Do it as a proper movie." And I said, "Well, all right then." And he said, "I'll give up my job." I thought, hey, he fell down, because he was earning good money. And anyway, he gave up his job, went on the dole, and we spent time sitting together, making up the story as we thought it should be done. And that's how we began. And we sent it off to various people, and I knew various people in the industry anyway. And it got to the point where it was damn nearly made. The first thing we ever wrote, it got to the point where they were getting a director to join and everything. But unfortunately, the director, who can't remember her name, who did Witchfinder General, died just before we got the whole thing set up. And he was going to direct it. But there you go. That's life. A good punch in the nose to start with. That's how we got together.
Well, we are a Doctor Who convention, so we have to ask a few questions. How did you get your foot in the door?
No, well, there you are. I mean, I was interested in film, and my childhood friends, among them was John Fortune. We talked about doing films, and then suddenly we made a film, just an amateur film, silent one. But it was pretty good. I can look at it now, it's amazing. It's got everything you need, tracking shots, panning shots, follow shots, all sorts. It's all there. And it's an interesting film to watch. It's a drama, but again, silent. But having done that, I really thought, well, this is where I want to go. Because I was at art school at the time, wondering what the hell I want to do, and knowing damn well I didn't want to be a teacher. And so, I thought, I must try and get into the movie business somehow. But everything seemed like locked doors. You'd go to HTV, which was in Bristol, and they'd say, oh no, you can't really, you have to be in the union or something like that. And BBC was kind of closed shop anyway. Then, surprise of surprises, we made a couple of other animated films on this silly old rostrum of mine. And John Borman, who was working at Bristol at the time, saw one of them and said, oh, I like that. Could you do something for me? And I thought, well, this is it. This really is it. We're going to be, I'm going to be in the business. And it was just a kind of persistence after that. Just keep. Once I'd met Dave and we started writing, we just kept writing and sending, writing and sending, writing and sending. And that's sort of how we got Doctor Who, really. Writing and sending.
I've got a question. The great Barry Cryer once said in an interview that for every writing partnership, there's a sitter and a pacer. Which one were you?
I was the pacer. Dave always typed. He always stayed static, type, because he could spell.
Is that how it works with a writing partnership? Both of you together at the same time
Yes.
around the typewriter?
Yes, we've always worked together at the typewriter, and it was amazing. We began to think with the same mind almost, and I think Dave described it once as like a marriage without sex. But we got very, very close in our minds, and we knew what was coming up somehow. We could actually plan things very easily, and I was going to dart ahead and think of an idea and thinking, look, we've got to have a bomb here or something, and we sort of move towards it and get to it. But it was the happiest of times. We really worked well together, and we played well together because our families were close as well, because my wife babysat for his children and we sat for them, and all that sort of thing, so it was a whole family thing as well.
One of my colleagues has a question.
Yeah, Bob, you obviously wrote the Invisible Enemy for Doctor Who. Have you listened to, or did you know that Big Finish have recently brought back the Swarm from that story in one called Revenge of the Swarm? I forget the writer. Was it Matt Fitton? Possibly.
In a word, no.
No. Oh, okay.
But they've been in touch about all sorts of other things. Big Finish has been in touch about all sorts of other things. They've done Omega and K9, various other people, and no, that's about it. But I'm sure they're going to tell me about the Swarm sometime or other.
Are you ready for it? Is that how it works?
Well, I don't know. I didn't know they were doing it, actually, but I'll get after them now.
So have you been tempted to work for Big Finish at all, or even been approached about it?
No, I've not been approached to work, only approached to use our characters. But I mean, I've got plenty of other work.
Oh, fair enough.
Did you know that Big Finish are also bringing back Omega in the Gallifrey series?
They paid me for that.
Yeah. who's playing Omega?
I have no idea.
I'll just pass the mic further down.
I understand Keith Floyd was inadvertently responsible for you getting into Doctor Who. How did that come about?
Well, I'll go back to my saying writing and sending. We met Keith in Bristol before he opened his restaurants, before he became a sort of big chef. And in his earlier life, he was in the army. He was in the Royal Tank Corps. And his story of his 2 years in it was absolutely amazingly funny, but sad as well, a bit like Keith, really. Anyway, so Dave and I decided that we would write his life story. And so we wrote a play called A Man's Life, because the advert used to be A Man's Life in the British Army. It used to be in the big posters. And we sent it off, didn't know who to send it to at the BBC, so we sent it to BBC London. And didn't know what would happen to it after that. And then a year later, almost the day, we had a phone call from a chap called Trevor Ray, who said, oh, we've just seen your play, A Man's Life. Yeah? Oh, we love it. I think it's great. You know, oh, it's really funny. I said, would you like to come meet us and talk about it? And we said, yeah. They said, there's one thing, there's a real problem. You know, the tanks, I mean, they're so expensive to get tanks these days. I said, well, you know, we'll talk about it and see what we can come to. So this is, when we were asked up there, we went there, and we went immediately from reception to the bar, where they proceeded to get us really drunk. This was Trevor, and he's here today. Derek Sherwin and Terence Dix. And it was showered with gin and tonics until we were absolutely blotting. And they said, well, it's going to be difficult to do with tanks. They said, would armoured cars be all right? I said, fine, armoured cars, no problem at all. And then into the conversation a bit further, they said, do you know what we do? No, we do Doctor Who. Oh, great, it's fine. Oh, look, these armoured cars, that's no problem, no problem. Would you like to do a Doctor Who? Yeah, sure. But let's talk about these tanks. You see, well, they've been asked to get new writers for Doctor Who, and they read this piece that we'd written, which was about Keith, therefore Keith was involved in getting us the first Doctor Who.
You obviously, Bob, you obviously wrote the Wrong Trousers for Wallace and Gromit. Did you ever meet Peter Sallis or see any of the actual production of the show itself, like how it was made? And
Yes, I was very close to the production. I met Peter many times during that production and afterwards, because we talked to him about various aspects of what we must do in future programmes. Yes, met him many times. Lovely man, great actor. And unfortunately, I think now, I mean, I daren't say anything more, but I mean, you know, he's obviously met perhaps a little bit beyond doing the voice anymore. But I mean, we must wait and see.
You worked with 4 script editors, I believe, on Doctor Who. Terence Dix, Robert Holmes, Anthony Reid, and of course Douglas Adams.
Yes.
How did you find them all to work with?
Terence was a hard taskmaster, but I mean, he had to be, because we needed to be brought into shape, as it were, because we tended to be a bit extravagant on sets and things like that. But he was very good, and he did the job and helped us to get into knowing how to do a Doctor Who. After doing the first one with him, we knew how to do it. I mean, then Bob Holmes was perhaps my favourite. Who was a really nice guy, and I really we both had a real rapport with the way he was thinking, so we liked him. Tony Reid, I mean, honestly, when I came to write the book, I couldn't remember being with Tony Reid at all. But I mean, I remember working with Tony because I had him to work for me on series down in HTV, but it's a kind of grey period of his. But Douglas Adams was fantastic. I mean, he was great at doing lunches. And that was the limit of his expertise in script editing. And we'd have a few chats about things over lunch, but then we'd talk about jokes and talk about, you know, stories, ideas, everything. He's a great guy. But Robert Holmes, for me, was the script editor for Doctor Who.
So you were approached after you'd done the Axos, which was a nice learning curve, as you were saying earlier. But then they come along and go, right, we've got this 10th anniversary story. How did that structure work? Did they say, right, we've got the 3 actors, just bring us something, or how did it work?
Well, yes, pretty well. They said they'd seen William Hartnell, and he would be keen to do it. And so they said, well, you know, why didn't you have a go at that one? Do it with the 3 doctors. But beyond that, It was just think up a story. So we've just been, I think I read it in Scientific American or something about black holes and event horizons and stuff like that. So we based it around that. And the fact that it was such a powerful thing that it needed all three doctors to work on it, on our problems of things being whisked away from Earth and things. So, I mean, it was really their idea to get the three doctors together for the 10th anniversary and us to come forth with an idea and a story for it.
One of the last, well, the story that you worked on for the Fourth Doctor with the drugs and the lovely mandrills, which, yeah, I was basically asking you, how do you feel about the designs that came about from some of your writing choices? Because your description of the mandrills in paper, or even K9, how do they differ from what you actually finally saw on the screen?
It somehow isn't really a matter of how we saw them, it's how you film them. I think the mandrills were filmed very badly, but could have been quite a frightening monster. But it was a new policy apparently that, you know, I forget the exact words, but something like you can't use that, which was when in Nightmare of Eden the doctor or somebody takes an axe off the wall, the fire axe off the wall. You can't use that. I said, well, what then? He said, a jagged polystyrene cup. Because he had the edict down from above saying nothing too violent, no blood to be shown, that sort of thing, you know. But then it seemed to work itself into the softening of the filming of the monsters. Now compare those monsters where you can see the kind of slipper shoes on with the mutants, which were filmed in dark caves, and they're really frightening, which is good. Kids love it. Why mess them about, you know? And same with the axons. They were sort of half-light and they were really creepy. You know, I just can't understand why well, I don't know why they did it. They just made everything a bit soft.
So with K9, when you originally sat down, right?
K9 we saw as a kind of, much as he came out actually, but we didn't do the drawings, so the drawings came to us from the designer at the BBC. And we said, yeah, that one's good, you know, like that one, good. I remember the actual words, so it was sort of, he was kind of, I think the very first draft we wrote, he actually hovered in the air, just above the earth, just above the ground, which would have been great, but they couldn't do it, they didn't have the technology to do it, so they had to put wheels on it. And so you get the sort of casted look of the original K9. Which used to knock down scenery, I'm told, I'm not sure it's true.
Yep, let's come back.
What was your favourite villain to write for out of the Axons, Omega, and of course the Black Guardian?
Without any doubt, Omega. Anyone who could say, a hero, I could have been a god. It's got to be great to write for. I mean, you could really let go on your dialogue on Omega. Whereas the others are a bit sort of mute in a way. So yes, for me it was Omega, who was, you know, really a charming fellow underneath all that.
Got to ask a bit more about K9 really, and particularly the Australian series. What's going on there? I heard talk maybe more. Is that true at all, or?
I doubt whether it'll be Australia, but we're trying to get. Contractually, we couldn't do another one, another Doctor Who's K9 series, until 5 years was up. Otherwise, the Australians would be involved in it. Would have to be involved in it during the contract. So we've had to wait 5 years before we start. We've got everything in trim, and we hope to be able to seeing something after Christmas. But you know, I can't tell you what it is at the moment.
All right.
Yeah.
Canadians, maybe. I was going to say, so my question of, would it be a reboot?
Said Canadians.
Yeah, no one mentioned Canadians.
Don't mention the Canadians, whatever you do.
Mentioned it once, I think
Going back to the three doctors, how did you adapt when it was obvious that William Hartnell couldn't have as large a role as you'd have hoped?
Simple answer, we didn't. We didn't know until very late after finishing the second draft of the script with all the stuff that we put in for William Hart. Yes, William Hartnell. And so we did a bit of cutting, which we suggested to Terence, and he did the rest. I mean, because he was there on the spot, knew what he could do and what he couldn't do. Because there was a third interim one as well, where he had a little bit less to do. And then there was the final one, which Terence did, he had a lot less to do. So that's how it worked on that one.
Nightmare of Eden was the only Doctor Who script you wrote on your own.
Yeah.
And of course you went on to had a career as solo writer, not least with the Oscar-winning film. How does the experience of writing on your own compare to writing as part of a partnership?
Well, at the very first, it was very lonely, as you can imagine. There was another thing about it as well. After we kind of went our separate ways, I thought, well, start waiting for the commissions to roll in, but nothing came at all. Finally, after a year, Robert Banks Stewart rang up and said, I'm doing a series in Bristol, would you like to show me some locations? And I said, sure. I thought, ooh, this is going to be good. So I showed him around for a day, and he said, great stuff. And then I took him back to the station, we got on the train, bye-bye. I thought, oh. There, I thought, how awful. Then I went home, I thought, God, I was really expecting that he might sort of give me some work. And of course the telephone rang just after that. He said, I forgot to say, would you like to do an episode? And I said, yes, please. So I did that too, of Shoestring, which went, and then I script edited the first series and went on to do other things. But I worked, beyond that, I worked at HTV for, I think, 6 years, writing, and I was a total overall script editor for anything that came in. Anything written that came in had to be read, commented upon, and answered. It was amazing. And I had a pile of paper and God knows what, for, a whole room full of stuff that had been sent over the years. They said, we want to get rid of it. But everything had to be read and answered. And I had, Tony Robinson was one of my team of 4 readers I had, and we had some jolly good fun over that.
Sorry, what did you get?
Your Doctor Who scripts are full of science fiction ideas, which sort of make me wonder, did you have a fondness for the genre before you wrote for the series?
Oh, absolutely. From Destination Moon onwards. At school I used to draw rockets all the time, and thinking about space, and thinking about other planets and aliens and whatnot, down there, of course. Always, part of my growing up, and then started to read science fiction, and it really grabbed me. And then when I didn't expect much of Doctor Who, but I watched the first one, I thought, wow, this is incredible. I mean, the real hook is the TARDIS. You go inside a place and it's bigger inside than it is outside. It's absolutely amazing hook, and did a wonderful job with it, and I'm glad they did.
You got to write the Sontaran Experiment, if memory serves, which it hasn't been today for some weird reason. What was it like working with other people's creations?
It was perfectly all right working with other people's creations, except that dear, lovely Bob started to tell us the whole life history of Sontarans, including their sexual lives and other things. It was too much information, Bob, too much information. Just went on and on and on, saying, we don't want to know. And but otherwise it was fine. I mean, he was just a villain, wasn't he? I mean, he was a little flat, ugly villain. I mean, that's how it works. I mean, you just adapt whatever you've got. I mean, they did it because it was cheaper to do that than build a new monster.
Okay.
Have you watched any of the new series, and what are your thoughts or views on the actors / production of it now?
Well, I enjoyed the Tennant season very much, and some of Stephen Moffat's writing there was fantastic, but I felt that it's sort of gone downhill a bit in the last few years, and this one last week, which I watched, but in some dismay, because I thought, well, it doesn't have a plot, you know, and thinking of the way that stories used to be hatched, and you know, even right up through the Tennant things, you get a good, strong story, but there wasn't a story in it as far as I was concerned. But I mean, that's my opinion. But otherwise, it's just got to be careful to not lose the kind of the magic of Doctor Who. It's tending to maybe look a bit too glossy, too slick. I don't know, but again, that's my opinion.
How frustrating did you find budget restraints when it comes to reproducing your ideas onto the screen?
It's always a problem, because you always want to go on further than they do. But hopefully, and sometimes it worked that it made well, particularly in Doctor Who, it made them take a step forward in technology. In fact, they said, we've had to buy a new bloody machine for you know that, don't you? There's a travelling back machine which they bought, because they had to do a lot of CSO scenes, and this machine worked to make it easier, but I mean, but it was nice to think that we had to make them pay out some more money to do things properly. But so, yeah, more and better besides, I say.
So apart from the project you're not allowed to talk about, that definitely has nothing to do with Canadians.
No, no.
It doesn't. No, seriously. What are you up to at the moment? What are you up to at the moment?
What about the moment? I'm trying to develop a new series for children called Flora, which is really for girl children, 50% of the audience. And it's at very early stages, and I'm a bit of a painter in my spare time, and I did an exhibition with an artist who lives near me in Bristol, and she showed me some drawings she'd done of this character. I said, wow, that's got to be done. So I'm working on that at the moment, but I've also done 2 episodes of a children's series, the first 2 episodes of a children's series in New Zealand, which I finished in June, and I'm waiting to hear upon whether I'm going to be working on a science fiction feature film, but I haven't heard back from them yet. So that's what I'm doing with them. And writing another book, I expect. Bound to be doing something.
The 2 series that you're working on, obviously the one in New Zealand and the Flora one, will that be aired over here, do you think? Or?
Well, the New Zealand one, they're going to take to markets like Cannes and Los Angeles. So if they sell well around the world, I'm sure maybe the BBC will pick it up, or perhaps an ITV station, I don't know. But the other one, it was at such early stages, I can't say anything about Flora at the moment. Just hoping that we can get a sponsor, maybe margarine people.
Are there any questions from the audience at all? No? Well, in that case, I'd like to thank you very much. Anybody else? No? Okay, in that case, I'd like to thank you very, very much for talking to us. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bob's book is available in the foyer. Plug.